Yeah, we're good. So I was telling Lori that it's super easy to talk in front of students. Do this on a daily basis. Then when you get in front of your peers, it's like, whoo! So, yeah. I had to write down my name so I remember who I was when I was talking to you guys. So, good evening. I want to thank you guys for all coming out. My name is Cullen Fronick. I am one of the business teachers at Cloquet High School and also a member of the Young Life Committee. Just want to kind of just give you some information on tonight. We basically have three main goals for the purpose of our banquet tonight. One is for you to learn more about what Young Life is. Secondly is for you to hear about the good news of Jesus. And then third is for you to perhaps figure out a way how you might be able to become involved with Young Life. This is our major fundraising event for the year. And as you come in, maybe you've sort of had a number in your head as far as what you might be willing to donate. But just kind of be open to that number as you hear the stories that you'll hear here in a little bit. We do have a financial goal tonight of raising $50,000 with a $25,000 match. And our hope is that we'd also be able to increase our monthly donor base. So just a little bit of information for you. If you could take out this little brochure here that you have at your table, you can see the different ways that you might be able to partner with Young Life and how it would impact the lives of students. Basically, three different ways. They're on the right-hand side. Basically through prayer. You can keep up with what's happening on a regular basis by emailing younglifepoints@gmail, so that would be Brian. And then also be added to our newsletter list. Time, if you're looking at maybe some ways you might want to be involved with different opportunities that Young Life has, there's a whole laundry list there, and there's also like a little white card that you have inside of your brochure for the evening. And then finances. Again, we had talked about that just with the goal to be able to kind of increase that donor base. So with that, I'm going to transition over to our area director, Brian Points.
Yes, I am the area director. Sorry if I wasn't able to get to your table. If I haven't met you before, I'm Brian Points. I'm the area director of Young Life, and I am so grateful that everyone is here just to see the community support and the people that want to learn a little bit more, understand a little bit more about Young Life. How many of you have never been to something like this before, or heard of Young Life maybe? Or you've never been to a Young Life banquet? I mean, that's what I'm trying to say. So it's the first time at the banquet. Thank you so much for coming, learning a little bit more about Young Life. It's awesome to be able to hear what this party with a purpose is, to be able in this community to know more about Young Life. This fall is actually the start of Young Life, Cloquet, Esco, Carlton, Cloquet area, the start of our 17th year. And in the country, it's the start of the 76th year for national and international. It's been international for quite a while too. We're over 100 around the world. So it's just really awesome to be a part of it. 17th year. In 2001, there was 2 lorries that made it happen. I feel like I wasn't here then, but I've definitely heard some stories about that. And it's grown and blossomed over those many years. They opened up their houses to teens in need. They brought a handful of students to camp. Then there were more. Then there was a summer of 60. There was starting with high schoolers. Then there's a season even that we worked with middle schoolers, and that may be in the future as well. A new director came in 2014. A new standalone building was offered to us in 2016. We used it for 2 years, and then this year we're excited to be able to go back to our roots and be more in homes and public spaces. We're grateful for that building for the last 2 years, but we're also grateful to give ownership to the students to be able to do it in their own homes again. So that's what it's all about. It's about students telling adults what they need and creating space for students to be vulnerable with us and with each other. See, once a week I get to stand up in front of this party with a purpose we call Club, Monday nights, and I wonder what keeps all of these students going. Because there's a lot out there that's trying to help or hinder them, ways to cope, or just ways that are telling them even to quit. 4 out of every 5 high school students will either try or participate in some way in weed or alcohol in a month, every month. And in Carleton County, we are, at least last I checked, the number 6 county out of 87 for suicide rate. So why would Young Life exist in a place like this? It's because we need caring adults to care about students. As I stand in front of these students and wonder what makes them unique, because what you and I went through in high school is definitely different than what they're going through, but I also wonder what unites them, because there are definitely some core truths that we all go through, regardless of whether you're in high school now or you went to high school in the 50s. We all want our own identity to belong, for someone to care, and everyone wants us unconditionally to be loved. Is that what brought us here tonight? To know that we're loved. What unites us could be our caring hearts for students, to show them that they belong, that they matter, and to love them. We are all invited into this community, this party, a party with a purpose, to care for students. Just like in 2001, you're a caring adult who notices students in need, and some direction, some correction, some love. In fact, we're going to hear from quite a few community members tonight that have perspectives on this party with a purpose called Young Life. I'd like to invite those few, it's only a handful of you, to come up on stage if you're part of the program, and I'll continue to share just a little bit while that happens. So we can be part of this party with a purpose, and that purpose is to show students that they can be loved. See, these students all feel the need to fit in. They all feel the need to measure up and earn their place. Some of us probably even feel like we need to measure up and fit in too. Like I said, we all want our own identity to belong and for someone to care. Even we want this unconditionally, to be loved. And at Young Life, we get to introduce students to a love that does not fail. This love doesn't care where you have been. It cares about you now. This love doesn't need you to measure up. It measures up for you. This love doesn't turn away from you. It accepts you as you are. One of the things we hear so much from students is that Young Life is a place where they can feel loved and accepted unconditionally. In a world where there's so much division lately, that love doesn't seem possible. If we're honest about this world, we know deep inside that something is not right, and we're all trying to find a way to fix it, to measure up, to fill ourselves. But what unifies us all is that we are all offered a place at this party with a purpose. A place to be loved and accepted without any conditions, to know you are intrinsically worth this love. At Young Life, we believe that Jesus is that love. He invites us to be in this party as we are, so he can show you his love for you. You didn't have to do anything to earn that love. You are just worth it to him. While we are still sinners, Jesus died for us. He didn't come to this world to condemn it. He came to save it. Each of us needs to hear, you are worth being loved. Regardless of how any student or any of us responds to that message of Jesus, we in Young Life care for them, love them unconditionally where they are. We want to be there for them as they go through this life of mess. Just be there for them. To be told it's okay to mess up and learn from our mistakes, and to show them that they have a place to belong no matter what they're going through. To show them that they're loved and worthy of being loved. So thanks for listening to that little piece of just how Young Life Vision, why it's even in the community. Hopefully you can catch the vision and continue to partner with us in some way. But I think it's powerful to hear from different community perspectives. So I've invited several people from the community to come up on stage to just share 1-2 minutes from a different perspective, a different role that they're in. So we're going to invite each individually up to share who they are, what role they have in the community, and how they've seen Young Life have an impact. Our first represents the direct contact we have students, and that is Gus Lehman, one of our Young Life leaders. Please welcome him up.
Okay, as I've been introduced, my name is Gus Lehman, and I live here in Esco. I've lived here for the last 13 years or so.
Can you tell us just a little bit of the perspective you have as a leader with Young Life?
My perspective, I would just say that I've been involved in youth ministry of various kinds for probably 15 years or so. Young Life for the last, this is my 4th school season. I would say what's unique about youth ministry in general is just that you're ministering to young people. And Paul tells us that our motivation for ministering to others has to be the love of Christ compels me, or the love of Christ motivates me. And it's nice that Jesus in the book of John, he says that as I have loved you, now go love one another and show that love to one another with what you're willing to do. Be doers of the word and not just hearers only. So for me, Young Life represents an opportunity to be a part of the community with young people and introduce them to who Jesus is, what he's done for them. But if I were to summarize my experience in the last few years with young people, it's the difference or the distinction between what is temporary and what is eternal. And that's it for us too. It's so easy to get bogged down with what is temporary and what doesn't have any lasting value. And that's what young people are struggling with. And so I've had experiences over, there's a young man I'm thinking of now over the course of 3 years. He had a lot going for him in terms of the things of this world. He had, not all of them come from broken homes. He had a loving home. He had a lot of advantages, but he needed to learn how to grow in his faith to recognize what was eternal and what would have eternal value and not just focus on the pressures and the concerns of day-to-day life. And then there's some that you meet that they don't know the Savior at all. So they're really stuck in a temporal mindset. They don't understand that there is anything more. So when you look at them and you say, what is the point? Why are we here? They have no purpose in that sense. And so if I were to just summarize, it would be that for me it's so nice to be a part of a community that's trying to share eternal perspective with young people who are stuck in a very temporal world. So that would be my experience.
We have 11 leaders this semester, and if each one of them tries to be very intentional with about 5 to 12 students, so that would be 120 students that are being reached to be able to just go through the mess with them, and that's an awesome thing. So another person that is making an impact on students' lives is Kaylee, and she is from the Vineyards.
Yeah, so my name is Kaylee, and I have been working with students at the Cloquet Vineyard for about a year now, and it's just been such a pleasure in the last year that I've been here to get to know Brian and some of the other Young Life leaders. And one thing that really stands out to me about them and the way that they do ministry, hopefully like us, but also in a very unique way with just the relationships they have in the community, is that they just have this relentless invitation to students. They can get in schools and they're at sporting events and they're just getting on their turf and just handing out this relentless invitation to come and see and to meet Jesus and really walk out a new story or walk out a new life. And I think that's something we see from the very beginning of the Bible through story after story after story, that God is just continually inviting us into something that's new and good and really exciting. And through club and camp and all of those things that I see more of the fruit of than just Instagram pictures and things. But I get to see students come home from camp just bubbling about their experience and about the just undeniable love that they felt, and the the acceptance and really the peace of heaven that they get to experience at camp. They come home back to our group and tell us about it. Or I met another girl, the first person I ever met from Young Life, had kind of met Jesus at Young Life, wanted a little bit more with her story and her experience, and so she ended up coming to a mission trip with us a couple summers ago and just had a really, really good time, met some really good people, and I got to be part of her baptism too when we came home from that. So I just love how Young Life is constantly handing out those invitations, and we never really know what God will do with them, but it's really cool to be part of that story where there's kind of this push and pull and back and forth between students with our churches and our groups and Young Life. Really all of us coming together to really play in their story and love them the way that Jesus pursues them to do so.
It's been awesome to be able to work with lots of different churches in the area. Actually, in our program, we have at least 15 churches that supported a table, and it's been cool to be able to be a part of, for me personally, in the youth ministry aspect with all those different churches. So I'm also grateful to have great relationships with the 3 main schools in this area too. Beyond that, we work with other schools too, but the next person is from Cloquet High School, and we'd like to welcome up Shannon Smith.
Song, but I'll spare you guys. My name is Shannon Sands. I'm one of the counselors at Cloquet Senior High, and I'm going to age myself here, but I've been with the district for 18 years, so I've really seen the progression and got to experience a lot with Young Life. I think 3 things really stick to my mind when I think about Young Life, and a couple of people have alluded to the fact that Young Life staff, they are just loving on kids wherever they are. So it doesn't matter their background, what kind of faith they have, or even what their life circumstances are. They just show up and they love them right where they are, and that is a super cool thing for me to see. Brian, he is in our building a lot. He hangs out in our lunchroom, thank goodness, because we need all the help we can get in the lunchroom. But he's just walking around and kids see who he is, and he's making himself known and just, chilling and having a good time. We had homecoming last week. Young Life showed up at our tailgate event before the football game. They set up a Gaga pit, and again, they just experienced kids and hung out with kids and make them feel comfortable and give them a place to belong. They show up at sporting events. So not only do they love on kids where they're at, but they literally go where kids are at. We've got a lot of kids where transportation is an issue, or they're at home at night and they can't get out and go places because they're watching their siblings, or some of them are working to help support their families, and this gives them an opportunity to connect with Young Life if they can't get to where Young Life is. In 18 years, I have seen countless testimonies to how Young Life has changed the lives of our kids. Whether it's just giving kids a place where they belong. Some kids don't ever feel like they are a part of something, and I think being able to go to club once a week gives them that sense of belonging. Also, kids that go to Castaway Camp, and I'm going to give a plug for that too, because if you ever get an opportunity to sponsor kids and get them to camp if they can't afford it, do it, because it is seriously a life changer for a lot of our students. I've seen kids get through addiction and abuse, deal with mental health and grief because they have the love and support of Young Life adults in their life, and they also just have that newfound hope with a stronger or even a new relationship with God, so that's pretty cool too. And then on a personal note, I think as a school person, when I get to show up to club, I've been a guest speaker before. I hate every minute of it because I don't like speaking, but how do you say no to God, right? So, but whether I've been a speaker or I've just shown up at club, students see that faith is a big part of my life. And so they can walk in my door at school and shut the door, and if they want to talk about their faith, or if they're struggling with something, or I've even had kids come to me and ask if I just pray for something for their family. And to me, that's pretty cool. So I love Young Life, it's awesome.
Okay, that's awesome in the counseling role, and there's lots of other people I know that are here that also do a role with youth work. It's cool to see Reach Mentoring Program, the United Way, lots of other places that have been part of that. Text for Life was one that I wrote down too, so awesome. We also have not just a staff member of the school, but a teacher from Cloquet, and we'll invite up Chris Swanson.
I totally do not believe that Shannon doesn't like talking in front of I am Chris Watson. I teach at Cloquet High School. I teach social studies. And I am really glad to help with the Young Life stuff when I can. I've also guest spoken, I guess, at Young Life before. It's been a while. We could probably do that again sometime, right? Maybe it didn't go well the first time. But I tell you, you know, it changes things when kids are able to connect with each other and not in the same way that they might have at school. Just a show of hands, how many people here have friends that they've known since they were in high school? Raise your hand. Yeah, I think that's got to be everybody, except for those that are in high school yet. I just know that for me growing up, it was really, really important. And some of those friends that I've had since those days have stuck with me through the ups and downs of life. They have been. And what better place to meet those people and to spend time with those people than at Young Life, doing the fun stuff, you know, not having to compete with one another. We have plenty of kids that are athletes, that are on the competition field with each other. Imagine even within the club competing against each other. And at Young Life, the competition is pretty low stakes, you know? And then they get to actually talk about stuff that's deep and real. And I can't imagine my life without having had that, especially when I was in high school, but I know it doesn't happen for everybody. And so I'm really grateful that Young Life is here in town or in the area, and that area youth have access to that. It's not just the kids that get to be friends with each other, it's also, you know, the adult staff. With Brian, having him around the high school is fantastic. And I just think it shows the depth of the care that this group has. You know, we get to see a lot of stuff in school and get to speak into kids' lives. You know, all the people up here on this stage and plenty of people in this room get to speak into kids' lives as well. But Young Life is a little bit different than that. And being able to pray for students that are off at camp and the support that is necessary to keep things going is so important. We get to see the results of that all the time in the classroom. So last but not least, I think the t-shirts are pretty cool that Young Life puts out. So if you can get your hands on one of them babies, I would do that. Because that shows, you know, that things are happening. Kids are wearing them all the time.
Yeah, teachers and staff get to be with students 40 hours a week at school, and that's awesome because I'm grateful for the way that they take time to be with students. We asked actually a bunch of Young Life students what makes a good teacher. Here are some of the things that they listed. They said, understanding, fun, enthusiastic, keeps us accountable, they can relate, they're authentic, and most of all, they're caring. That just sounds like a great teacher. Each year here at the banquet, we have a rotating award that goes to the Cloquet, Esco, Carlton area, the 3 schools for the most outstanding staff member. Each year at the banquet, we actually, on the certificate, it says, with honors and recognition of your complete and total awesomeness. That's what it says. So this year, it was ESCO's turn, so we asked some ESCO students, current ESCO students, to vote for an ESCO staff member. So many teachers were nominated at this school, and I was blown away by how many highly regarded teachers there are within the eyes of students at this school, so that's amazing. The reason why they nominated could be boiled down to the list that we shared earlier. So, but we are grateful and excited to say that this year's award goes to Corey Gray, and he can come on up. The students are here that voted for you, so here you go. Complete and total awesomeness. There you go. It was understanding, fun, enthusiastic, keeps us accountable, they can relate, authentic and caring.
So I still have some things to work on, but we'll get there. So thank you to Young Life for all the opportunities you provide for area youth. I'm blessed every day, I guess, to be able to have that opportunity, and it's a blast, quite honestly, to be able to have that with all the kids. I teach in a district with a bunch of caring teachers, and that's really what it's about. You can do a lot more with kids when they know you care, so that's kind of the key to my success, I guess. So thank you again to Young Life and the students for the kind words. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, and we would be amiss if we didn't let a current student share their experience now as a high schooler at this party with a purpose. So let's invite up Ellie Peddle.
Okay. Hi everyone, I'm Ellie Peddle, and first and foremost I would like to thank everybody for being here. It means a lot to all of us students. I was asked today to give my personal perspective on Young Life, but I would like you to keep in mind that each person has a different story of how Young Life has impacted his or her life. The very first club I went to was the second to last one of the year. I was a sophomore and it was a little awkward for me, but as time went on, I got more and more comfortable. I always looked forward to going to club for a couple of hours to get my mind off the real world for a while. My favorite club of the year is the Messy Club. There's paint, eggs, and shaving cream involved, and you can only imagine what happens. A big part of club is when we take roughly 15 minutes to sit down and listen to someone, normally Brian, speak about Jesus. I have learned so much through this, and the talk almost always seems to correspond with something that's going on in my life or even something in the past. I ended up going to Castaway Club this summer between my sophomore and junior year. It was hands down the best week of my whole entire life, and I believe that nothing will probably ever be able to top it. It's a little slice of heaven on earth, and I am so thankful that Lori Kettala and Liz Points forced me against my will to go. The first day at Castaway, I cried because I wanted to go home, and the last day of Castaway, I cried because I didn't want to go home. Last summer, I volunteered at Camp Buckner in Burnett, Texas. Each day, I woke up at 6 in the morning and wrote a devotional. I then went to breakfast and then proceeded to clean that up, reset about as many tables as there are here, and I actually think there was probably twice as many now that I look, and serve all the campers, cleaned that up, and did it again for lunch and dinner. Basically, when one meal was finished, we started setting for the next meal. So tonight, as I was setting it for this dinner, I was having severe flashbacks. We also helped set up the evening activities for the campers. We volunteers had about 1 hour of free time per day and went to bed exhausted at roughly 12 p.m. It was physically and emotionally draining, but I would never change that time for anything in the world. Serving those campers was so rewarding. I made so many new friends from Texas, Louisiana, Georgia, Tennessee, California, and I'm still in contact with them via Snapchat and Instagram. My life did a complete 180 since I started going to Young Life. Being a teenager is stressful. I went from barely having a baseline in my life to having God, all of the leaders, and new friends to look to when I needed. I went from being stressed to praying that God would help me take my worries away. I went from dreading the week ahead to looking forward to clubs. My relationship with the leaders and God have grown tremendously over the past years, and I couldn't be more thankful.
Some of the pictures here of Messy Club. Messy Club is where we throw whipped cream and eggs and stuff at each other, and it's a really easy picture to talk about how we walk through mess with each other. So that's awesome. Thanks, Ellie. Students can't exist without their parents, so we need a parent's perspective on this party is all about too. And Cloquet has been represented quite a bit tonight, so how about somebody from ESCO? Joyce Bergstead is currently on our committee and learned about Young Life first from her own children attending it, so here we go. Thanks.
As Brian said, my name is Joyce Bergstead, and I work here at ESCO Schools in the Career Center and then the Gifted and Talented Coordinator. So actually my perspective as a parent is going to come a little bit differently, because while my two girls were in high school, I thought when they went to Young Life, they were going to an interdenominational Bible study, which isn't, I mean, just so you don't think I'm a terrible parent and didn't know where my kids were, Jessica, actually her primary involvement in Young Life in high school was through a campaigners group, which is a small group, opportunity to learn and to grow your faith. She was actually in a campaigners group with Lori Hatch. So, but Jessica, lo and behold, after high school, when she became a student at UWS, I guess transitioned into a position of becoming a leader. And that is when I really became aware of the scope of influence that Young Life had in kids' lives. So really, I am talking to you as a parent, observing what my daughter's involvement as a Young Life leader. So leaders are caring adults who spend countless hours investing in kids. Who of us as a parent doesn't want positive role models in our kids' lives, whether that is a teacher, a coach, a youth group leader, counselors, or Young Life leaders. So these Young Life leaders plan activities for Weekly Club, along with providing a message of God's love to the kiddos. Young Life leaders show up. They go where high schoolers are. I was actually sitting in a Cloquet gym once upon a time, and I saw Young Life leaders come in and they plunked themselves right down in the middle of the student section. And just again, this is an intentional contact time that they have with the kids, fostering and growing those positive relationships. The kiddos are accepted, loved, supported, and encouraged for who they are. Leaders also spend a phenomenal, albeit exhausting, I'm sure, week at camp with the kiddos. And camp is fun, but for a number of kids, and I heard this from Jessica, my niece Erica is here as well, for a number of Young Life kids, camp is literally life-changing. The kids have a chance to learn, they have a chance to reflect on their lives, they have a chance to hash out things with Young Life leaders while they're at camp. And ultimately, they're given the opportunity to invite Jesus to walk with them each day. I saw personally the investment of consistent time, energy, support, the being there, friendships with the Young Life leaders that they commit to our communities, kiddos, always with the main goal of sharing God's love with them. As a parent, now when I look back, kind of understanding more about what Young Life is, I am very thankful that my girls had positive godly influences in their lives. Thank you.
And another one of our committee members, actually also a staff school member, would like to share the perspective of Young Life behind the scenes, and that is Robbie Mandati.
Hi, as Brian said, my name is Robbie, and my husband Jason and I have had the honor of being a part of the Young Life committee for the past 3 years. Based on our experiences, we have seen that the committee impacts the work of Young Life by providing support and guidance to Brian and our amazing team of leaders. We meet monthly as a team to hear directly from Brian on how things are going with the ministry and the kids. We review logistics that are instrumental to keeping Young Life healthy and sustainable, and we work as a team to support our leaders and our youth through prayer. Committee involvement is a great way to offer support to a powerful ministry that impacts the kids in our own backyards, without directly doing the contact work myself. In our home, we're shuttling our 6 and 8-year-olds between activities, along with juggling the demands of careers and aging family members. Supporting Young Life as committee members has allowed us the opportunity to serve in a way that matches the season of our life. I believe that God calls each one of us to serve Him and share His message in different ways. Being a part of committee has impacted us as individuals and as a couple too. We've been able to meet new community members that share our faith, our values, and our desire to impact area kids through the power of Christ. We have grown in our own faith on this journey too, as we've been able to see the incredible impact Young Life has had when we hear individual stories of lives changed, and when we've seen God answer prayers of all kinds to keep this ministry thriving in our community. My life was forever changed about 20 years ago when I became involved in Young Life as a high school kid. It was through the relationship that I had with my leader that I found love, acceptance, and guidance to strengthen my relationship with the Lord. It's a privilege to be a part of the behind-the-scenes work that allows Brian and our team of leaders the same opportunity to reach out and connect with area kids, and in time, to share the gospel. Committee membership has been a rewarding way to support Young Life, and I know that it impacts us more than we could possibly give in return.
Thanks, Robbie. Hey, can you give it up for these community members one more time and they can take a seat? I have Jordan come on over by me. That's awesome. We're going to close this time of hearing about this party with a purpose, with a community member that is from this area, and I actually got to know her by being involved in Young Life College down in Minneapolis. So we're going to hear a little bit more in-depth story of her just experience and the impact that Young Life has had. So give a warm welcome to Jordan Hill.
Well, like Brian said, my name is Jordan Hill. I graduated from Esco High School in 2007, so some of you may remember me as Jordan Schultz. So my husband is here with me, Matt Hill, who graduated from Cloquet High School in 2006. So as much as this is my Young Life story, this is our Young Life story together. We're here with our two kids, Olive and Theo, so if you see them running around, they belong to me. We live down in the cities, just north of the Twin Cities in Anoka, and I am just overwhelmed and honored to be here tonight. It was in this room that I've eaten lunch through my whole elementary, high school career. It was on this stage. I've had countless choir concerts, and these little these riser things were the same ones. I believe they've been painted though. They used to be white. Anyway, like I said, I'm just so honored to be here. My first experience with Young Life was when I was a junior in high school. I went because my boyfriend, Matt, at the time, invited me. They do say, come to club to meet the hub, or come to Young Life to meet your wife. Though I cannot say that was our story because we were dating at the time. But I didn't necessarily go for the Jesus aspect. I actually grew up in a Christian home. My dad was a pastor here in the community. I went more for the social aspect. But even after Matt graduated, I kept coming back. I kept inviting my friends. Joyce's daughter, Jessica, was one of the people that I went to Young Life with. I didn't really realize the impact that Young Life was making on my life until college. It was a couple days before my sophomore year of college that I got a phone call from my mom that said my dad had a heart attack and he had died suddenly. And I knew in that moment that my life was going to change forever. And in those months and weeks and days after that life-changing event, I continued to pursue God. I continued to chase after him with everything that I had, but I knew that I wanted to take more of an active step in my faith. I was down in the cities, I moved back up here, and that's when I stepped into leadership within CEC Young Life, best decision of my life. And I led a campaigners group. I brought countless kids to camp, and I just saw lives changed in this story that God was writing through CEC Young Life. I eventually moved back down to the cities where I got involved with Young Life College. I started as a student, but then quickly moved into leadership. After my husband, Matt, and I got married, we got to lead Young Life College together. Best marital decision I've ever made. It's where I met Brian Points and got to see God move and work in him and Liz's life as he brought them to this community and brought Young Life to where it is today. I led a small group. My small group was mostly sorority girls from the University of Minnesota. Largest challenge God has ever given me, but I will say I do have some success stories from that. But again, saw countless lives changed by the work that God was doing through Young Life and through Young Life College. After we had our kids, my husband and I walked into a committee role within Young Life College, and that's the position we find ourselves in today. Now that story seems really nice, it's easy for me to tell you, but the reality is that 12, 13 years ago when I walked these halls in high school, I always had my head down. I never thought that I would amount to anything. I felt worthless, I felt insecure, I felt invaluable, and I thought, you know what, I'm just not going to do anything with life. I have a vivid memory of walking down the big staircase with tears in my eyes thinking, God's never going to use me. I'm never going to do anything. I didn't find the value that God really placed on my life until I started getting involved in Young Life. I struggled with my identity, even though I grew up in a Christian home. I still struggled with knowing where to belong. Knowing where to belong and where my true identity really was. But the reality is that Young Life taught me a lot. Young Life is a relational ministry. Young Life doesn't say you gotta fix it all and then come. Young Life doesn't say, come here to this. Young Life says, I'll come to you. Jim Hatch and Lori Kettle sat and cried with me after those months of losing my dad. That's what Young Life is. It's meeting people where they're at and saying, you were made for this, and this being the life that God has for you. Young Life is all about intentionality. If you come to a club on a Monday night, it may seem very chaotic. People running everywhere, crazy stuff happening, but there's an intentional choice and purpose behind every song, every game, every talk that they produce on a Monday night. Young Life is Jesus in the flesh, incarnational ministry, where we get to be Jesus to the students that come into club every night. That we get to show them the love that Jesus has for them. And really, I was really good at that as a leader. I was really good at looking at those students and saying, God loves you, He's got a purpose and a plan for you, and you are gonna do great things in life. And I lived a lot of my years in Young Life leading, believing that for other people. But I didn't believe it for myself. I was still holding on to those insecurities from high school and before that, thinking I was not good enough, that I wasn't gonna amount to anything. But one day God whispered into my heart and said, Jordan, if you can love those students with an unconditional love, if you can believe great things for their life, do I not believe the same thing for you? And I began this journey of realizing and believing that God said those same things about me, that He had a plan and a purpose for me, and He was writing this amazing story of greatness that was going to come. I was whispering to my husband that this is the night that God had in mind. When I was in those years of feeling so insignificant, that this is the night He had in mind, that I was able to stand on this stage and tell all of you that God believes in each of those students, and each of the students that don't come to club yet. That He's using Young Life in this community to change lives. I need some water. But I don't think that awesome, I knew someone was gonna do it, I knew it. But in reality, I don't think that my high school story is very different than a lot of the students that walk the halls of the high schools in this community. I think a lot of the students walk down with their head down thinking, I won't amount to anything, that I'm not good enough for a life of purpose. Because really, all these students want is to be seen and to be heard and to be loved. And for people to show up for them when really no one else will. And God, the beauty of tonight is that God's inviting us to be a part of that story. To be a part of the story that He's writing through Young Life in this community. And the amazing thing is that it doesn't just end here. That the students will go out and that they will impact other communities. And they will impact other parts of this state, other parts of this nation, and other parts of this world. That we have students from our Young Life small groups. Tommy's in Michigan, working at a Young Life camp. Kayla's in Chicago, leading in Young Life College, or Young Life there. And I see some of even my young life students that I led are here tonight. That this story isn't just about this community, but this story that God is writing has an internal impact. And we get to be a part of that. And there's so many ways that we get to be a part of the story that God's writing, whether it's giving financially, opening up your home, or praying. Because believe me, the leaders that are leading, 11 leaders, that's amazing, need your prayers and need your support. Because day in and day out, they show up. I love the verse that they use here in 1 Thessalonians 2:8. We loved you so much, we were delighted to share with you not only the gospel, but our lives as well. And that's what those leaders do. They show up for their students. They live life with them. My leaders lived through the darkest days of my life. And now I get to stand here and sing my redemption song. That God was already writing the story in the years that I was walking these halls. But I don't think it's just my redemption story. This story is for the lonely, depressed teenager that is walking the halls believing that they won't amount to anything. But there is a God that loves them, that cares for them, and that has a plan for them. And so for years, almost a decade now, I've been able to speak into the lives of young people, and I will not lose an opportunity to do that. So I do not know the names of all of you students that are here, but I do know the God that knows your name. And he says that you are set apart before you were born, that you were created on purpose and for a purpose. And he says, do not be afraid, for I am with you, and you can trust me. That is the God that every day Young Life introduces to the students here in this community. And I get the heavenly responsibility to invite you into that story, to invite you into the beautiful script that God is writing over the students of this community. And I can't wait for 10 years down the road, because it's weird to think it's been a decade, but 10 years down the road when we have the same banquet and one of those students are standing in front of a new group of people telling how Young Life has impacted them. And that's what we get to be a part of. And that's what I get to be a part of. And it's not just impacting students, it's impacting those two kids back there. And the lives of the students and their kids. And it's just a ripple effect that we get to be a part of. And it is the best decision of my life. So I invite you, do you want to be a part of the greatness that God has in store for this community, for those students, for these leaders in CEC Young Life? Thank you.
Hi friends, my name is Chris. There's a couple things that we say often. One is what you do matters. Clearly, you've heard the story and the vision of all the lives that have been impacted by young people. See, I believe that everything is sacred. Everywhere we go, there's an opportunity to experience the divine and to experience heaven. What Young Life does, and you've heard it over and over again, is they introduce students to heaven, like at a football game, at a parking lot, throwing food at kids on purpose, right? Like that's heaven. And I'm a firm believer that kids are just dying to be noticed. Young Life excels at that, by showing up and letting kids that they have value. So, the second thing we say is, you can do hard things. You really can. And you're here today, and we're asking you to prayer that is a big fan of prayer. Big fan, right? Asking you to open your home, that'd be wonderful. But without your support, these lives can't be impacted. So I'm asking unapologetically to be generous. I think often we kind of like undersell something like, hey, if you got some time, you got a little bit. I'm asking you to go above and beyond. You really can do hard things. And by doing those hard things, it matters. So in front of you, there is the forms you can fill out. You can give your check or cash. You can go online and give as well. And I'd love it if we tonight could really fit and have the whole entire budget paid for in full. Like when I heard, I keep looking at Steve like you're Brian, but when I heard that Brian was not having a computer, I'm like, you gotta have a computer to do what you gotta do. I'm thinking, I bet that there is lots of people here, if you heard the need, and someone gave you the opportunity and the challenge just to give just a little bit more. And I believe that you're out there. So, what you do matters, and you can do hard things. We are going to end this wonderful banquet by doing a Young Life tradition, which is called Cardboard Testimonies.
Oh, I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Oh, I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Yeah. Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God.
huge thank you to you for coming out tonight, learning more about Young Life. Hopefully you caught the vision of it. What you're going to do now is there's an insert to your program. Go ahead and fill that out. You can put it in the white envelope at your table, and once it's all filled out, you can hold it up above your head, and we'll have some people come and collect it. Again, so much thanks for being here tonight. We'll do a quick closing in about 5 or 6 minutes.